Hello everyone, I'm Barbara O'Neill and I'm so glad you've joined me today. In this session, we're diving into a topic that many people overlook, yet it has a profound impact on health: the foods and habits that attract parasites. Parasites are sneaky little organisms that can wreak havoc on our bodies, often without us even realizing it. They thrive in environments we unknowingly create through our diets and lifestyle choices. Today, I'll be sharing insights on what to avoid to keep your body free of these unwanted invaders, and I'll also provide practical tips to maintain a strong, resilient system. Let's explore how making a few changes can transform your health and vitality. And as a special thank you for joining me today, we're giving away 100 free copies of my best-selling book to subscribers. So if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment about why you want to win my best-selling book. Let's get started.
Corn, polenta porridge, one of the problems is, and this is particularly a problem if someone has a yeast presence in their body, is as the corn dries, the silk, the silk around the corn, if it's drying on the plant, you'll see it goes black. What's the black? It's mould. And Dr. Robert Young, in his book, he says that dried polenta is often tainted with some mould. So we sort of keep away a bit from the maize, the dried corn, especially if they've got a yeast problem. So, and also, pretend you're a diabetic. Is there a breakfast there you would be happy with? Yeah?
Is it the same with corn kernels for popcorn, if they're organic?
Yeah, it's a question mark. It's just that if someone has a yeast problem, they're just best keeping away from the dried corn. You know what, some people doesn't want any of that. They said, I haven't got time for that in the morning. So what would be a very quick breakfast, a very common breakfast today? It's not a breakfast that I actually desire, but a lot of people are happy with it. Smoothies. So what can we put in the smoothie?
Diabetic, you mean?
Well, I think we'll go with the diabetic because we're looking at low sugars. So we start off with 1 cup of fluid. What could that 1 cup of fluid be? Yes?
Water.
It could be water, but that'll be a bit boring. Let's make it a bit more interesting. Soy milk, yeah? Any other? Or? Almond, could be almond milk. Now what makes a very nice basis is the coconut water, because that's slightly sweet.
I have the experience, it really depends which coconut water you get. They're not all the same.
Okay, so you look for a good one. Coconut water. I don't really buy it or use it, but I know people that do have told me the same thing. So you try different ones. And you might even contact each other and say, this is a good one. What else are we going to put in our smoothie?
Berries?
Yeah, berries. Person that wants to lose weight would be great for the person that's got a yeast presence. And remember, a sign that a person has a yeast presence is their tongue. Have you looked at your tongue in the mirror yet? It should be pink from the tip to the back. If it's got a white coat and you can scrape it off, that's usually just, waste coming out of the tongue. But if you can't scrape it off, they're little fungus buds. So the tongue is quite a good guide. But yeast presence usually manifests itself, manifest itself in sinus problems, rashes, tinea, which is like itchy between the toes, also in the private parts. In Australia they call it thrush. So with a woman, with a man, they call it jock itch, so, around that area. So anyone that has any of those symptoms, they're best to go on a antifungal diet, which is very, very low sweet. And also at the same time taking some herbs. some herbs that will kill off the fungus. Remember, you alternate them every 2 weeks. Might be garlic, might be oregano essential oil that you start very slowly with. Not initially. You're really trying to get that sweet right down.
Take away the potatoes.
That's right, yep.
Yeah.
So the lunch today would be a great ketogenic diet if you took the potatoes away and they had a few pieces of chocolate for dessert. Yeah.
If we cook the potatoes, can we eat them then? Because the starch changes when you cook it.
We want all starch out for the ketogenic. But for the cancer patient, that lunch today would have been perfect. They just don't have 6 pieces of potato. They might just have 2. Because Professor Constantini, he found that just under the skin of the potato, there are antifungal properties. So you balance it out with the GI and that. Why would we put someone on a ketogenic diet?
Lose weight.
Yes, they can lose weight, but specifically what's the ketogenic diet for? Healing the nerve cells, yeah. Healing, so the epileptic. But if you just do bananas and the oils, it's a much lighter cake. Yes?
Sometimes when you eat vegetables as a main course and then should have a dessert, you should try to avoid mixed vegetables and some fruit in the same meal. So I found that a difficult issue to solve sometimes.
That's right.
So how do you think about
So
that issue?
let me tell you how we solve it. We don't, as a rule, serve fruit and vegetables together. But sometimes we'll have a main meal and then we'll serve an apple pie. And that is a little different to a raw apple, having a raw apple after a vegetable meal, because the cooking does break it down somewhat. So you haven't got quite the problem. And so one of the laws of health that's violated can even be exposure to mould, so not fresh air. Mould can be a factor. We had a guy come from Saudi Arabia who had very severe psoriasis. The back of his neck was like crocodile skin. He was 40. Now he had improved because he found a website and it was called cortisone-induced eczema. And he'd been applying cortisone for 20 years and he had what they called cortisone-induced eczema. It got to the point where the cortisone was basically causing it. And apparently a German doctor resides over this site and he says you just got to stop the cortisone. You've just got to stop it. You're going to go through sheer hell for about 3 months. Just live in a bath. And people that do have skin problems, very itchy, they often find a bath with a bag of oats in it and squeeze the oat water in. That can be relieving. And there's a pine substance that you can buy and put in a bath, and that apparently can be relieving. So when he came to us, he'd gone through the worst. He had a few little red itchy bits on his arms, the back of his neck was quite bad. He ate a lot of peanuts, a lot of wheat, a lot of oats, a lot of refined sugar. So we advised him on that. We don't serve any of that at our health retreat. At the end of 2 weeks, and he had the steams every night, he really enjoyed the steams. Diving in the cold water, back from there. He felt so good. He was there with his wife. They were Malaysian. At the end of the 2 weeks, he said, we're a little disappointed that, it has not improved very much. And I smiled. I said, it takes 2 months to get the residue of those allergens out of the body. So you've got to give it 2 months, even though you haven't had any. And how many people stop them and after a month they say, well, it's not doing anything. They haven't given it enough time. Where's our time factor?
One of the key issues I've observed is how mould in foods, particularly dried corn products like polenta, can exacerbate yeast problems in the body. Mould is a breeding ground for fungi, which can lead to systemic issues if not addressed. It's always best to steer clear of foods that may harbour mould, especially if you have symptoms like sinus issues, skin rashes, or that white coating on your tongue that indicates a yeast presence. Now let's expand on this idea. Mould isn't limited to corn. Other foods commonly tainted with mould include peanuts, certain dried fruits, and even coffee if it's not stored correctly. These moulds can release mycotoxins, harmful substances that act as a magnet for parasites. My advice? Store foods like nuts, seeds, and coffee in airtight containers, and always check dried fruits for signs of spoilage. If you're battling yeast or suspect mould exposure, eliminate these foods for at least 2 months and focus on a diet rich in fresh, whole, and organic produce. Another habit to reconsider is consuming too much sugar. Parasites thrive on sugar because it provides them with the perfect environment to multiply. Replace high sugar foods with low glycemic alternatives like leafy greens, cucumbers, and avocados. Smoothies, as I mentioned earlier, can be a great way to incorporate these into your diet. Use unsweetened almond milk or coconut water as your base, and include antifungal ingredients like fresh ginger or turmeric to boost your system. Don't forget about proper hygiene in the kitchen. Cross-contamination can introduce parasites into your meals. Always wash fruits and vegetables thoroughly, especially if you're eating them raw. A vinegar rinse or a baking soda soak can help eliminate contaminants. And remember, leftovers should not sit out for too long. Parasites can begin to develop in improperly stored food. Lastly, address environmental factors. Mould isn't just in food, it can grow in damp areas of your home. Regularly inspect your living space for mould, especially in bathrooms, kitchens, and basements. If you find any, deal with it immediately using natural cleaning agents like vinegar or tea tree oil.
Turkish barracks. And a war correspondent went there to report on the war effort, and he was shocked. He was shocked at the conditions in this hospital. There was raw sewage in the corridors. So he went back and he wrote a newspaper article, front line. It said, "Did we raise our young men to die like this?" In fact, the report was that the French were being better looked after than the British. So the British government asked Florence and 35 nurses to go to Scutari and see what they could do. When she got to Scutari, she was horrified. The doctors wouldn't let her come in. They said, "This is men's business." So they let her go to the kitchen. And in the kitchen, it was filthy. There were big vats of water with bits of rotten meat in it. That was the food. The death rate in the hospital in Scutari was 50%. In fact, the men had a better chance of survival on the front line that they had in that hospital. The doctors were not washing their hands between operations. So it was about this time Florence just went and started scrubbing the kitchen. But she also telegrammed the British government. She knew her limitations as a woman in 1854. She said, "You need to set up a sanitary commission to come and assess the situation." But meanwhile, another boat of wounded arrived, 1,200 wounded men. The hospital was already overflowing. And so the doctor said to Florence, "All right, you can come in." And the first thing she did, she started cleaning. She got her nurses to start cleaning and scrubbing. She found a young man that was still in his battle clothes 2 weeks after he'd been admitted to hospital. She insisted that the doctors wash their hands between operations. They thought, well, we're already covered in blood, what's the point? Why did Florence Nightingale know about these basic cleanliness laws and they didn't? Florence read her Bible, and she had read that in Leviticus God gave strict cleanliness rules to Moses in the desert with these millions of people. In fact, if someone had died, they had to be taken out of the camp, buried in a deep hole, and the people that carried them out of the camp, they weren't allowed back in the camp for 3 days. They had to wash their clothes, they had to wash their bodies. You see, when someone dies, immediately these microorganisms get busy because their role is to bring matter back to dust. In fact, if you wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to go outside the camp, dig a hole, bury it, and no one could know that you'd been there. The report is, in 40 years, this refugee camp, and that's what it was, of millions of people, there was no sickness. The only death was really from old age. And in the book, The Ministry of Healing, there's a very interesting chapter. Actually, there's many interesting chapters, but one of the chapters is hygiene amongst the Israelites. And in that chapter, the author has taken all of those Bible quotes to show you. Chapter on anemia, and I explain that process in detail. So boosting hydrochloric acid can often help to actually conquer anemia. What recommendations do you have for a child who every time he gets sick, he gets croup, frequently progresses to pneumonia? A common cause of excess mucus in the respiratory is an allergy to those 5 allergens. So that's the first thing I would do, is stop those 5 allergens. And remember, it can take 2 months to see a result. My husband's suffered with AS for 8 years, getting worse. His spine is fusing. I read your chapter on arthritis, but there is a way to reverse fusing. Do you know, it's keeping that body agile. Exercise is vital. Moving that spine, also rubbing castor oil into it, keeping well hydrated, because it's synovial fluid that's between each joint. And synovial fluid is 99% water, so that's what you would check, all of those things. Turmeric, the only painkiller? Well, there is another painkiller, and that's called cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is an analgesic.
Cleanliness and hygiene are foundational to preventing parasites from invading our bodies. A major way parasites find their way into our systems is through contaminated water. Drinking clean, filtered or boiled water is critical, especially in areas where water quality is uncertain. This is particularly important for avoiding waterborne parasites, which can cause severe digestive issues. Another significant source of parasites is undercooked or improperly handled meat. Parasites such as tapeworms and roundworms thrive in raw or partially cooked meat, particularly pork and fish. Always ensure meat is cooked thoroughly to the recommended internal temperature. Pets, while beloved members of the household, can also be carriers of parasites. Regular deworming and maintaining their hygiene are essential to minimise risks. Always wash your hands thoroughly after handling pets, especially before meals. If you have a vegetable garden, consider fencing it off to keep pets from contaminating the soil with feces. Personal habits also play a critical role in reducing parasite exposure. For example, nail biting can introduce harmful organisms into your body. Keeping your nails trimmed and clean and encouraging children to avoid putting their hands in their mouths can significantly lower the risk of parasite transmission. When travelling, it's essential to take precautions in regions where parasites are more common. Avoid raw foods like salads unless you're confident in the preparation standards. Drink bottled water and avoid ice in drinks, as ice may be made from untreated water. Be cautious with street food and ensure it is cooked and served hot. To strengthen your defences against parasites, consider adding natural anti-parasitic foods to your diet. Garlic, pumpkin seeds and papaya seeds are excellent choices. They create an inhospitable environment for parasites while supporting overall digestive health. Herbal remedies like wormwood and black walnut are also effective in targeting parasites, though they should be used under the guidance of a health professional. That's all for today. I hope you found this session helpful and learned something new about protecting your body from parasites. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel. It helps spread the word and keeps this community growing. I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with your thoughts, questions, or even your own tips for maintaining a parasite-free lifestyle. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay healthy and take care.